Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 134 of Two Left Thumbs, the best gaming podcast you've heard in at least 15 seconds. I'm your host, Puppiez, and joining me today, it's Mats. How you doing, man?
Hey puppies, how you doing? I'm pretty good.
That's good. Have you been? What have you been up to?
I'm kind of making this game, you know. Uh, it's called Apollo, a co-op game, and you might have heard of it because you asked me to come on your show about it.
I'd seen it around. Um, for those who are listening and may not know yourself or Apollo, just playing at home, going, "What the fuck is going on?"
I don't know how they could not have heard of me at this point, honestly.
Terrible, living under a fucking rock, I tell you. um, who are you, and what are you doing on the internet these days?
My name is Mats Borges. I'm a museum game maker. So a lot of people ask me like, "Oh, so you make games for museums or do you make games that are museums?" And I'm like, "Yes." uh kind of both, kind of neither. I just got started in college making games for this museum, and generally just was like, oh my god, I want to do educational stuff like this forever, um, because it was this type of game that was educational, but it wasn't like Math Blaster. It's like, what's 2 plus 2, and then 5 points and a little achievement for it. It's something a lot more involved with history and stuff. And I was like, oh my god, done. That's me. And that's what I've been doing professionally. And that's what I decided to do with Apollo, a co-op game, is to like give people access to history from the pilot seat, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
that's sort of what
So
I've been doing.
that's really cool. Talk to me more about again museum games. Something a term I haven't actually heard before, which is kind of
Mm-hmm.
brilliant. I like it. So how did you get into that kind of line of work to start with?
Um, yeah, I guess we're going to life story territory.
Oh, always,
It's
mate, always.
okay. So I was in community college, which you're not in America, are you? You have an accent.
No, I'm not. I'm kind of familiar with the terminology. It's kind of. So
Sure.
you have to bear with me. I'll nod. There's a few American listeners though. They'll know exactly what you're talking about. Um,
Sure. Just to give the tiniest bit of context, because I think it's super important. Uh, Most Americans, I feel like, have this impression where you get out of high school and you go straight to a 4 year university, 4 year college, or bust, right?
right.
Um, but there's also the option of community college, which is much lower cost and gives you the opportunity to, like, just like explore your major, try it out before you invest $100,000 in student debt, that sort of
Right.
stuff.
So
I just really
you don't
recommend it to
spend
everyone.
hundreds of thousands of dollars on just something you have no idea about. You actually try it out first.
Exactly. I mean, like, what
Wild.
18-year-old is ready to decide what they want to do for the rest of their life, right?
And invest that much into it that early. Like that's like, I mean, I was different. I started my career when I was like 16 because I'm weird.
Wow.
Um, but
We're not all that self-driven, I guess.
I was hardly
Um,
self-driven. I had parents kind of like, you need to do work or join the army. I'm like, okay, not joining the army. This is fine. Uh,
that's good. I was the opposite. At 16, I oh my god, my grades were terrible. Like, in high school, coming out of high school, I had done so bad through school that I didn't even want to apply to college. That's my secret reason for going to community college. Not because it was better, which it was, but I was just like hating school, hating education. I didn't want to have anything to do with it for the rest of my life. But in that community college, I did this short little internship for a professor, just, helping students debug their games and stuff. We had a games program, at the community college, which is insane. If anyone is near Moore Park, California, and wants to go to Moore Park Community College for games, great program. Anyways, at the end of the internship, the professor was like, "Hey, this museum around here is hiring for interns, and I would give you a good recommendation if you went for it." And I was like, "Museum? I don't know. I guess I'm an artist as a game designer, so I guess it would be cool to learn about the gallery space or whatever, something like that." So I go and check it out.
In typical like teen forms, it's all whatever. It's
Exactly.
cool.
Right? This is why an 18-year-old is not ready to make life decisions. So I go over and they show me this. Oh my God. It is kind of insane. It is not just some museum. It was actually for the United States National Archives and Records Administration. And they had this game in this room called the Situation Room Experience. And the whole idea is 30 to 40 people, usually a high school class, come in, and everyone gets an iPad, and it's like, you're the Secretary of State, you're the Attorney General, you're the Deputy Press Secretary, right? Here's a national crisis, go. And because it's the National Archives and Records Administration, somehow these guys got access to the interior of the White House Situation Room. Like in 2006, they renovated the Situation Room, so they took down all the paneling, the table, the chairs, the microphones, everything, and they just kept it in a warehouse. And then these guys called them up and it's like, "Hey, can we borrow that?" And so they totally recreated this White House room that real presidents used for real national crises. And they're like, "Let's have high schoolers play in here, obviously." And I mean, that sort of explains the attitude of the whole thing. It's like really bold. It's like giving high schoolers this like respect and this, access to history that they just don't get anywhere else, right? So I worked there for like a couple of years as a proctor, helping them do the game and also like edit some things, the tutorial, etc. And what happened was I just realized over time, oh my God, I didn't think I would like education, but I'm loving every day that I work here. There was this kid from a really low resource school that came in, and we were all wearing shirts and ties and suits, and we all show them to the White House, which is the real White House room, and we sit them down in these nice chairs and give them an iPad, and it's like, "What can I do for you, sir?" Right? And you could tell that was the first time this kid was ever treated with real respect in his life. And he told us, and I was like, "All right, that's it. Why would I spend my life making art games in service of myself when I could really make an impact like this? I want to do stuff like this." So that's how I got into it.
That's amazing, man. Like to have that sort of drive for those motives is incredible. I mean,
it's insane luck.
Yeah,
that it just happened to me.
That's really good. So you said you were originally going in looking at artistic style of games. What were you looking at exactly before you kind of diverged?
Well, the classic example is Journey, but I was very snobby. I was like, Journey isn't very advanced in an art theory sense. I want to make something a little crazier, a little wilder, and maybe something shorter, more gallery space, sort of. And there's actually lots of this stuff Um, After community college, I transferred into USC Games, and there's a program there. Like there's the games program, and then there is a program called MAP, Media Arts and Practice, which is unfortunately the major that I didn't know existed that I probably would have applied to when I was 18. And that is making this interactive digital stuff for museums, for events, for all sorts of stuff, right? Messing with
Right.
technology for that kind of thing. Um, Instead, I got into the games program, and now I'm making video games, and it's interestingly adjacent. I'm still satisfied. I'm still very happy about it.
Nice, nice. Let's talk about the game you are working on, Apollo, a co-op game. Tell me some more about it, the basis for it, what people will be experiencing when they play.
Sure. So Apollo, a co-op game, is an asymmetrical multiplayer game where one astronaut player on a PC or a Mac or an Oculus Quest headset uh, is the astronaut, and they're in these like beautifully recreated interiors of the actual Apollo spacecraft. Um, I mean, like we can get down to the hex color of paint that was used on the things because the stuff is so well documented. So it's really beautifully recreated by our 3D artist Lucas Schwarzer. And then we have the mission commanders. They are on any internet-enabled device, phone, computer, smart TV, maybe. I don't know. I'll double check on that before I make that claim. Uh, they get the NASA mission control console where they get some information about how to explain to the player how do you play, what you're doing, and the mission commanders also get these primary source documents like schematics that were actually used by NASA, and they use those to solve puzzles and little disaster scenarios. And those disaster scenarios are things that actually happened in the Apollo space program. We have a demo available right now, which is a really condensed, alternate sort of recreation of the Apollo 13 disaster. This is a very much in development game. We're at the start of it, right? And our demo is only inside the lunar lander. So what we explored was uh, the the Apollo 13 disaster was a ruptured oxygen tank. And so they needed to go between one spacecraft and the other, from the lander to the command module. And they needed parts from both. We were making this as a student project in school, so we weren't going to model two massive rooms. We just didn't have the time and resources. So we explored what if they were just in the lander? Could they have fixed something like this? So we pretty much developed this basis, this idea for the game, which is let's have people relive these events and explore not just what did happen, but what could have happened. How else could they have solved this problem? And what would have happened if they didn't solve the problem, right? And you get really interesting things coming out of that. Like, what if the astronaut dies on the mission, right? What would have happened in history? My favorite thing is this speech called In Event of Moon Disaster, which was written for the President of the United States in case the astronauts died. And the sad thing about this speech is that it's a banger of a speech. Like, it is one of my favorites. It's beautiful. Like, you should check it out on your own time in a
What's it called now? I'm just
robe
gonna
when
punch
you're in
into
a
Google
sultry
real quick
mood.
now.
Yeah, oh my god. Um, in No, I'm not gonna try and recite it from memory. It would be too
That's
embarrassing.
okay. I won't
Um,
put that kind of pressure on you.
cool. Well, most people have no idea this speech exists, right? Because it never happened. Right?
Yeah, I had no idea it was a thing either. I mean, I know that a lot of presidents will have speeches pre-written for general situations or things that could happen, so they're like ready to go. They're not like, oh, we have to wait for speech writers and other people to kind of get their shit together while something's happening. I didn't realize they like released them after the fact though. That's really cool.
Absolutely. I don't think they released most of them, but the thing about the Apollo program is that it's one of the best documented events in human history. It's insane. The problem has never been for us not being able to find information. It's having too much information and trying to sort through it all. And I feel like that's the problem of why so many people know so little about the moon missions. They're really hard to access. Like, if you want to learn the stories, which are insane stories, you have to, read these dense books, watch these long movies or documentaries. Most people don't like documentaries. We have the beautiful film Apollo 13, which is a huge inspiration for us. And it's an inspiration for us because it takes these really complicated things and it really smooths it out and focuses on what's the human experience of this and how can we show people what it was like. And that's a really accurate retelling of the Apollo 13 disaster. I recommend it to everybody. Yeah, that's a huge inspiration for us.
So you're like you said before, you're still in early development with this at the moment.
Very early development.
Very early development.
We have a lot of pre-production done, but we are launching a Kickstarter campaign. It was going to be in late August, but we have very recently decided to postpone by a couple months. So if you're interested in Apollo, dear listener, please follow our Twitter, our Facebook at ApolloEXP to know when we actually launch this Kickstarter campaign. That would be very helpful. Because at the moment, we're still coordinating with Kickstarter games and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'll definitely have once we get those links, you have to share them with me, and I'll get them out to the people so they can get in there and have a squiz. Because I mean, it's not often that you find educational games that may actually be fun.
Exactly.
I mean, I remember my early days. You're in school, you're looking up cool math games on the internet.
Yeah, same. Exactly. I was really soured on the idea of these educational games. We actually have a term for them in the educational games industry now, which is improving. Those games are called chocolate-covered broccoli, right? Because it's just broccoli. Yep. It's steamed broccoli. It is disgusting. But they're like, oh, if we put in points and like sound effects and effects, like kids will like it. Obviously, it's a video game. Kids love video games.
It makes weird noises. It's like entertaining a toddler. You just give it something shiny that makes noise, and they're set.
Exactly. Toddlers love chocolate sauce. Put chocolate sauce on the broccoli, you're set. Well, that sounds disgusting, right?
I mean, yeah.
And it's even worse because of the combination.
Yeah.
So
this is the first game this is the first game you're making as well. Is that correct? Or am I just assuming incorrectly? I mean you made stuff for
that's a complex question of like what really is a video game. I've worked on a lot of software. I'm currently working on a lot of interactive software projects. But this is my first venture with this team making a full-length video game for commercial release. If that's your definition, then yeah.
Right. Okay. Cool. Any learning curves you've kind of hit along the way? Given that again, it's not. I mean, you've made things like this, interactive media like this before, but going to something that's more of a something for commercial use, for more private commercial use, I guess. Is there anything you've like learnt along the way that's
No, I haven't learned anything. Making games is too easy. There's no learning curve. It's just like smooth sailing. It's like
Nothing goes wrong. What are you
No.
talking about? Like you're only putting things back because it's like, you know what, we just feel like taking our time, you know?
Right. I guess the most interesting things that I'm learning about is, so here's the interview where it all gets borne out. My team is, for the most part, like most of the development is me and my boyfriend, who is the lead programmer, right? So developing a game, developing a business, and maintaining a relationship all at the same time is a really difficult dynamic, right? It's one thing to make a game without a business, it's one thing to make a business without a game, and it's one thing to just maintain a relationship. But if you decide to do all three at the same time, you're just a masochist, honestly.
Yeah.
And I
I've
guess that's what I am.
I think I worked. My wife are both in the same field, and we worked together briefly early on in our relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and that was interesting because we were like, you know, at work 12 hours a day, right next to each other in hot kitchens, like just under pressure all the time, and then we would literally get in the car together and drive home, and then we'd be home, and that led to some like really interesting dynamics. I mean, we survived through it for the most part pretty well,
Mm-hmm.
but it was interesting. It was touch and go there for a while. Like things got interesting because that weird dynamic of like you're at work and you're at home because we were both in different positions. It made things like we had to like very much segregate. Right, we talk about work here and home there. Do you have that same thing?
Um, we do it by hours because, like, even worse, we are working from home. We have been the whole pandemic, right? So
Yeah,
it's this weird experience of, I have a day job, and then he also has a day job, and then we also work on Apollo together, and then we have, us time, and that's
yeah,
all in the same place, right? 24/7. So it's all about managing time and saying, this is Apollo time, this is us time, right?
right.
Because especially in tech and in games, when you're doing passion projects, it's easy to not have us time, and that's
You just kind of like,
that's
oh,
just
it's fine.
bad.
We'll just work on this some more because we have the time, and it can. You can try not to get into that mentality of this us working on this game is us time as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then the two
Definitely.
start to mix, and then you have trouble separating that later on. I can imagine,
Exactly.
especially when you're in lockdown and working from home, that would be a genuine struggle, man. I don't know how you do it. That's incredible.
Well, thank you very much. It just sort of happened. Um, no, it's really interesting. A lot of people go into indie development going like, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And it's like, I don't even know what to call this, because it's not just the marathon of making the game, it's the marathon of maintaining this relationship, right?
Yeah, right. So did you guys meet through the project, or were you together before this?
No, we were together when we met in community college years. And it was really funny because at first, snobby, artsy me was like, I don't want to work on games with you, this really talented programmer, um, because it would taint the art. Like, I was a big fan of Marina Abramovich, and she very famously is like, never make art with the person you love. And I was like, Queen, yes, of course. And so I was all like that, and he was like, no, why? I want to make a game with you. And I'm like, no, no, no. And then one time in school, I was like, ah, shit, I need to program this like right now. I'm fucked. Can I curse?
Yeah, yeah, fucking oath, man. Like I'm Australian. It's part. It's like
Got it.
second language for me. This is very much not made for children. So you should be okay.
Excellent. So I was fucked, and I went to him, and I was like, oh, okay, just like please help me program this. And I just had the best time. Like, it was just awesome working with him, and it still is. He is a joy to work with, which is kind of why I was really okay with just like, you know, taking the opportunity and snatching him up before some company actually pays him good money. You know what I mean?
Get him while you can pay him cheap, and when he realizes how talented he is, and he can get better work anyway. So you're like, oh, you've got to finish this first now. You're committed. You're stuck here until you finish this now. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I tell him all the time. I almost feel a little bad when we talk about it that, like, he really is one of the more talented programmers I have ever met, and I have gone to a good school with good games programmers, but no, it's great. He's great.
That's really cool. It's good to see relationships thriving through work, especially like again, this year is the last couple of years now. I mean, fuck. I keep saying this year when I refer to like what's been happening with the pandemic and COVID, but it's been going for nearly 2 now, and it's such a surreal thought.
It doesn't
it's
register.
It's been a struggle for quite a number of people, and to see people thriving in that space and adapting has been something really special to see, which is something I've seen a lot in the industry and just around. Is like people are like getting through this and coming out with something that they really like. It's giving them the time to work on passions they give a shit about. Like, yeah, I've seen like games like yours getting developed. I've seen people start creative projects that have gone really well as well, and they only started that because they had the time and thus the creative drive to kind of do that, which is really, really cool.
Absolutely, that's what happened to me. I was applying to game industry jobs, which, looking back, I absolutely regret. Like, even spending a second looking at industry jobs. And I probably just would have kept going had it not been for the pandemic, where it was like, oh, let me explore some other options. Let me see what I can do, you know, while I'm still young, while I still have the chance, right?
Yeah, right. What's it like trying to get a gig in the games industry? When you first started, I mean, I know COVID's kind of kicked
Well,
everything around a bit, but what's that application process like, and like where were you looking? If you can tell
to give you some scope, uh, I went to USC Games, which in the US is ranked as the #1 games program. And, technically it is the #1 program in the world, but that's mostly due to lack of competition. And it's a very nice number to have, #1. Very cool. It means nothing when you actually go to apply to a job. Like, I was in community college, like slaving away, like in a really bad mental health space, working to get good grades and get into this good school. But what was it all for? Like, the education was actually great.
Yeah.
I actually love USC Games. I'm very happy I went there. But at the same time, I sort of thought that if you got into the #1 game school, you could get a games job out of college or something. I don't know. Someone would recruit you, something like this. I don't know. Childish fantasies.
Reality says no.
Yeah. So people graduating from games programs are competing with industry professionals because the turnaround of people getting laid off in the industry is so huge. Like, there's always veterans looking for jobs, right?
Right. So they're filling their own vacuum and leaving not a lot of room for like fresh talent.
Exactly. Fresh talent
that could be.
It's the classic thing of entry-level job, 5 years required, right?
Right. I've been seeing that a bit lately. My wife, who's been applying for jobs in community service work and particularly in like mental health and domestic violence assistance, having the same kind of issue where it's like, okay, cool, you need 5 years experience, but you need this qualification. But for that qualification, you need to do placement, and for that placement, you need years experience. So there's this continuous loop of, you can do this if you know how to do it, but we're not going to give you the opportunity to get in there and get that done and get that experience under your sleeve.
Biggest BS. Like, you will find games jobs that are like, you need 3 years experience in this software, and it's like, that software came out 1 year ago. What are you even talking about, right?
It wasn't even there then. I'll apply for this in 2 years. It's fine. But you may have to wait a little longer till someone actually can get in there with the job. Yeah, that's absolute bullshit. They need to things need to be looked at like that. Like, surely that's like, it can't be intentional, right?
It's hard to say. It's honestly hard to say that it's not people going like, we want a go-getter, right? Someone who's gonna apply, even if someone who believes themselves enough to apply to this job, even despite all these things. I don't know. No clue. Hopefully I don't have to worry about that in my life.
Hopefully. I mean, you're technically, it's like you've gone out now and you're giving yourself your own 3 years experience by working on something that's your own, which is really cool.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like, that's the way a lot of people are entering the games industry, is by being indie first, and that's terrible. Honestly, like, we don't have the market to support all the people who want to get into the games industry making their own games. It's just not there. You will go on Twitter and you can really explore the whole like indie ecosystem there, and it's insane. There are thousands, like tens of thousands of indie developers.
I've been dabbling that a little bit, and that's like how I discovered you as well. It's like, I've just started following this trail of indie developers and people that are working in indie development, and there's tons, man. Like, I was blown back. I'm like, how have I not heard of any of this stuff before? Like, there's such a like massive market there of people like making not only independent games but really cool independent games, and they're just not seeing enough traction because they're just kind of getting buried in the void that is Twitter. And marketing, obviously, for an independent self-made title is going to be very dependent on how much you can kind of afford to put into it financially as well, because that's where I'll imagine a large crux of it is trying to fund that as well, because you've got to pay people and all that kind of thing as well. If you want multiple people working on a game, but you don't want to do it all yourself, which is, I imagine, something that not a lot of people do.
Right. No, absolutely. I don't remember who tweeted it, but there was a very famous tweet of someone who said, yeah, maybe the only people who buy indie games are other indie developers, but dang, there are so many indie developers, right?
Do you think we'll see that change? I know, like, recently, especially in the last probably year or so, again, probably helps that there's a pandemic. We've seen a fairly big rise in indie games. Well, I have anyway, from my perspective. Do you think we'll see the market shift, especially with the AAA studios kind of shitting the bed quite a bit? Not only in what they're like, there's obvious drop in quality in what we're seeing from a lot of AAA developers lately, coming out. I mean, it's a lot of broken games kind of coming out, and people are kind of turning to indies, and we found some really nice polished indies, because again, they're passion projects and people like genuinely care about what they're doing. I'm not saying that the people who work on AAA games don't, but
it's a different beast.
The shareholders are a whole thing that they have to be concerned about, and that's getting pushed out.
It's much harder to make a game in a very large team, right? It's a lot of people have this mistaken impression that, oh, if you just pour more money into a project, you can do anything. And I mean, look at Cyberpunk, right? They poured millions and millions, and it didn't really help them.
I was thinking Cyberpunk when I was talking shit in the bed. I didn't want to mention games, but you brought it up, so we're cool. It's all good.
I mean, it happened. We feel bad for everyone who put in good work on Cyberpunk, right?
Yeah.
But it's a lesson, right? I feel like that's the greatest thing that Cyberpunk has really contributed for people, is a lesson of what to watch out for, I guess.
Yeah. Seeing larger games launch from someone that works in the space, do you approach when you purchase a game? Do you approach things differently yourself? Do you like now that you've seen how the sausage is made as such? Does it kind of taint your experience with video games, or are you fairly kind of open ended to like, oh, just going in and not looking at it from a developer point of view?
Yeah, no, it's impossible, honestly, to like put away the game developer's eye and see like, oh, they did that. That was neat, right?
Yeah,
Um, but you know, I've always or sort of been like so about AAA games. Ever since I, got into the whole artsy fartsy thing. Um, that's my secret. I'm a really artsy fartsy person who likes those things, and so like indie games have really satisfied all of that for me. Like, even at the level where I can look at a commercial product and see the real like soulful merit in it, right? That's more difficult a lot of times in a AAA game than it is in an indie game.
right.
So I've tended to really focus on indie games. Uh, Partly, yeah, because I can appreciate the work that went in, and I see the credits and see how many people were working on it, and it blows my mind, right? How small teams can do big things, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So while we're talking about you playing games, let's talk about your influences growing up. What games? How did gaming affect you in your younger life to kind of draw you into where you are now, or did it at all, or did you come strictly from an artistic side of things?
Um, Actually, I came to art from games because
Right.
I was like 8 years old, and I was like, I don't know. I can't decide if I want to be an astronaut or the person who designs Lego sets, right? And
Right. As
then
every 8-year-old is, it's just like,
exactly.
I could be a truck driver, or I could be a superhero. You could go either way.
Hard choices. So then looking back, I didn't know that it was this game that did it, but looking back, it obviously was. I played Shadow of the Colossus on the PlayStation 2, and
Right.
I was like, that's cool. And then, sometime later, I'm like, I want to make video games. Out of nowhere. I have no idea where this came from. Um, and for anyone who doesn't know, Shadow of the Colossus is a really artistic, beautiful masterpiece of a game, even to this day. I mean, they just totally remade it for the PlayStation 4, and it stands up. It is fantastic. So I think, yeah, I was around 8 years old. I decided I want to be a game designer. I don't really know what that job is. That's like the ideas guy, right? Sure.
Yeah.
Um, and so whenever anyone asked, I was just like, yeah, I want to be a game designer. That was a convenient answer. And then as I was getting older, getting into high school, getting more into art, I was like, I want to be a serious artist, but I also don't want to starve or die. So maybe I can do something with software, with games, and like, yeah, let's do artsy games. Let's explore the furthest reaches of where we can go with games, right? And in a way, I haven't stopped, but in a way, I'm focusing more on the education of it. Like you can see if you take a look at Apollo, it's not about education. It's not, I'm literally not trying to convey swaths of information to people. I don't care if you know the names or dates. There's actually no historical figures in the game. This is
Right.
about you. This is about your experience. And that's what I want to give to people, right? The experience of what it was like to be there at that time and to go to the moon.
That's really cool. Do you have any like, given it's a what would happen or what could happen in that scenario? Um, there's more probably about player agency than anything else. But
Mhm.
are there any kind of like, have you allowed for like any kind of um, weird strategies that could possibly work but may not have been thought of? Like, do you think there'd be
Mm.
any unconventional ways to do things?
There absolutely will be. We're all about making dynamic systems where people can figure out multiple ways to do the same thing. Um, I don't know. It's a lot more. This game is really a lot less about solving puzzles than it is about the experience. Like, just as an example, when we were developing this in school, the prototype, we had a functioning game and it was fun and it was nice. And then we decided to add this button that, like, you press enter and you get like a, and then you let it go and you get that NASA beep, that iconic like
Yep.
beep, the Quindar tone. Uh, and that changed the game. Like, now people were messing around and like just having so much fun pretending to be astronauts, and that's what you'll see in gameplay of this game. We've had a couple people stream our demo, and what always happens is a mess. Like they're laughing, they're stressed, they're having like frantic fun. Um, Even though the game is totally serious, like we have this, reconstruction of the spacecraft and a reconstruction of this disaster that really happened. Even despite all of that, it's just a fun time, and the way people experience that in a way that isn't like necessarily planned. Like, we never, we don't sugarcoat anything. We don't like lubricate it to like, I don't know, give it an atmosphere of silliness. We don't do any of that, but that's how people choose to do it and take it, and it's great, honestly. Like, this is how
Was that
people
something that
will
took you
connect
by
with history.
surprise when that started happening? When people started playing the demo and they're like, did you expect people to like go into it and like? I mean, sure, it's like you said, it's a very serious, not a serious tone game, but it's very like, this is the situation. It's not like it's not sugarcoated or anything. Did you expect people to go in and just cause absolute chaos?
um, in a way, I secretly hoped for it. Um, I've always been about people getting their games and playing them however they like. You know, I think my favorite game to this day is modded Skyrim, uh,
Right.
with the idea that people can go on the internet and change the game with like tens of thousands of mods to make the game you want and play it however you want. And it's interesting because people choose to play Skyrim in such different ways. Like, I realized, oh, I want a super serious survival sim where I'm role playing. Other people really don't want that. They want, Spider-Man mud crabs. They want,
Thomas the Tank
you know,
Engine Dragons. That's a
exactly.
favorite. Yep. I mean, when you can't put Thomas the Tank Engine in a game, is it really a game?
Oh shoot! I should have thought of that. I'm gonna have to find a place to put Thomas the Tank Engine.
just
Oh,
pop an
dang it!
Easter egg and you hit the right combination of buttons, and you see dun, 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 and you see Thomas just fly through a window.
You land on the moon, first thing you see. Dun, 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 dun. Yes,
Yes.
I'll write that
Just
down
like
right now.
write that down right now. Like you said, you've got time to get that in there. You're in an early development, so just swing that. And it'll be fine. It'll be great. Um, I'm sure licensing with Thomas the Tank Engine won't be an issue at
No,
all.
absolutely not.
No,
That's
no,
it's
absolutely not.
it's ancient. It's in the public domain, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, it'll be fine. So going forward, like I said, you're in an early development. What kind of stage are you at, and like where? Like, I mean, you said you're starting a Kickstarter soon. You've
Mm-hmm.
recently delayed. Where do you go from there to kind of finished? I mean, I know
Sure.
game development is a roller coaster that's totally unpredictable, but what's
Yeah.
what's kind of the laid out stages in your head that you have going forward?
Um. Yeah. Well, the the bad thing about a Kickstarter, despite the beauty of free money, is that you're not able to plan things down so well because you don't know how much money you're getting beforehand, right? So you have to have these multiple, like this accordioning sort of plan of, all right, how big will we make this game depending on how much funding we get. Right now, just to as a snapshot of where we're at, we have an art director, we have a composer who's writing an original score for us. Awesome. Uh, we have, you know, advisors. We have a science advisor, we have a game design advisor, we have a programmer, we have a designer, we have a 3D artist. That's the whole team. Um, so we have a ton of pre-production done, planning what the game will be, how we'll develop it, uh, the art style, right? The art direction, the musical style, the the plan, right? Uh, and pre-production for people who aren't game developers can usually be around 20% of development. Um, and I would say we're at 15% of development because we're not able to fully finish out pre-production, not knowing how big the game will be based on the Kickstarter funding.
Based
We're
on the
shooting for a
funding,
goal
yeah.
around $40,000, and that can sound like a lot, but if you really think about it, like for a year and a half development, that's that's not the salary of one person, right?
No, I was gonna say
Um,
that's like for a year's worth of work. That's yeah, that's not much at all considering like you have to take in other costs and
exactly.
pay people. It doesn't go
So
very far.
you know, we are everyone on this team currently has another job. We're all just doing this because we're passionate about it. So $40,000 is just enough to pay our bills while we make the game if we're putting our own savings into it. That's the situation we're in.
Wow.
And at
Right.
the start of my career, I'm kind of fine with this. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm getting an educational experience for myself in a way that you cannot get anywhere else. Um, and besides, I really don't want to work. I don't know, for some AAA where I won't feel like I'm making the impact I could have with this game. When I saw how people were enjoying with this game and how people were connecting with the history of it when we were prototyping it, I was just like, no, that's it. I want to do this. I really would regret not doing this. So
Yeah.
that's where I am. That's where we are.
It's good to see. I've only really started talking to a lot of indie developers recently, as I said, of kind of diving into that world of like this what seems like an endless pool of people making these really individual and beautiful games. Um, and it's really cool. Like hear stuff from people like yourself and different experiences because this is stuff I never would have known beforehand because you know I'm not in game development. I've never even looked at making a game. I can't even fucking code, you know. I'm just a guy that cooks food and talks shit on the internet, which is fine.
It is.
um
Yeah. I mean, like, thank you for exploring the site and showing it to people. I think it's fascinating, like, honestly, but I'm kind of biased. Uh,
Look,
I'm surprised there isn't a lot more making of videos for games, and especially indie games, because, like, these are the interesting stories of people, like, really struggling to make something, you know?
right. I think the only one that it's kind of it. There was one on Netflix that was like it wasn't like the games that made us, but it was like a history of games. I can't remember what it was called though.
Oh, yeah. The one that goes like starts with Pong and then has a ton of guests throughout the episodes, right?
Yeah, and it kind of works its way up through Doom and kind of the age of
Yeah,
video games.
I think
That's
it's
the only
called
one
like
that
the history of video games or something.
something like
No, it
that.
was a cool show. My professor was on that show. It was
Oh,
a great
that's
time.
cool. Nice. Yeah, I think like yeah, like that's about the only like this is how video games kind of came to be thing. Like you don't see like many documentaries on like how games are made and like what goes into them. Maybe here's what you do: you sign a Netflix deal, just real quick, call the people and say, look, I've got this idea for a documentary. And then say fund, all right? Uh,
Hmm. Hmm. I don't know. I feel like I would have to live a much more dramatic life than I'm comfortable with to make a compelling documentary.
and it's dramatic. I mean, look at reality TV for a second. Surely it's not. It's never all that bad. You can just like
Mm.
do like what you're
Okay.
normally doing, and then just do it
I'm
with
sure that's a
extra
very
drama.
good point.
You
I
just
don't
like,
really
yeah.
watch reality TV. That's not my cup of tea. So
Me
I'm
neither.
not really
I'm just going on
experienced
what
in
I
that.
see
Okay.
from gifs, like clips on the internet. You know, it's but everything always looks like there's something happening all the time. So you just make extra shit up, like, you know, someone steals the coding for your game and you have to go and like steal it back and make all these weird midnight shady deals to like get your game up and running and have people quit for no reason. And I'm sure it'll be fine.
Manufactured drama. Yeah, we can do that.
Exactly. Absolute
But
perfection.
honestly, making a game is hard enough. Like, you're asking me to have a business, have a game, and a relationship, and a reality TV show at the same time. Come on, dude.
I mean, you seem like someone that can be that's well driven, has a good work drive. So you'll be fine. You'll be right. But Mads, thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation with me. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and hear your story and hear about your game as well, which I'm kind of looking forward to now. I want to get in there and just like cause chaos because it's kind of how I roll with most video games.
Awesome. That's great to hear. I mean, thanks for having me on so much. And thanks for, not just having me on, but having other indies on and listening
Yeah,
to
man,
their stories.
I endeavor to do it more. There's, like I said, there's interesting stories out there. I'm like, I never thought this would lead with. I make educational games for a living in museums, so we're off to off. Oh, it started off great. It's fantastic. For those listening at home, where can people find you and your stuff and follow Apollo and learn more about it?
Well, most of our presence is on Twitter, but that's okay if you don't have Twitter. Only 2% of the world's population has Twitter. You can find us on Twitter or Facebook at ApolloEXP. And that will lead you to our website, our trailers, our everything. We have a demo that's up right now for free download on Windows, but soon we're going to totally update that demo and have it be much more beautiful and amazing, and have it also for Mac. So if you're interested in checking that out, follow us, give it a try, and hang on for that Kickstarter campaign where you can make some purchases.
Excellent. We'll also have all those links in the show notes below. And once you get the Kickstarter started, let me know, and we'll be sure to get word out to the people that are interested. And we may even talk about once we get this out, we can talk about this in retrospect, and we can come back have another conversation about how the rest of the gaming development journey went for you when you get there.
Absolutely, I'm down. I appreciate
Excellent.
that.
Sounds good. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening. If you would like to find the podcast, you should know, if you've been listening for now, I mean, it's 134 episodes, you know where to find us. Twitter at @left_pod, Instagram 2leftthumbspodcast, and our YouTube content is at 2leftthumbs.online, or you can search 2leftthumbs on YouTube, and you may have to search for a little bit because there's another channel out there that's more popular and cool than us, but we don't care. Fantastic content, so you should come watch us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Matt, thank you so much for joining me and having a chat. I look forward to getting your demo, causing some chaos. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Chat at you next week. Bye.